Did you know that parents rank teaching financial literacy as the toughest life skill? That's where Greenlight comes in, the debit card and money app made for families. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and track spending with real-time notifications. Kids learn how to earn, save, and spend responsibly, while parents have peace of mind knowing smart money habits are being built with guardrails in place. Try Greenlight risk-free today at greenlight.com/Wondery. That's greenlight.com/Wondery.
What say you, Richard Alex Murdaugh? Are you guilty or not guilty of the felonies wherein you stand indicted?
Not guilty.
How shall you be tried?
By God and my country.
The exact time when Paul and Maggie Murdaugh were murdered.
At the end of the investigation, it was obvious.
I'm not here to work with them, okay?
And the whole point is to have this not fall into the wrong hands. This case is unique, it's unprecedented in South Carolina history.
Well, welcome back to Unsolved South Carolina, the Murdaugh's Murder, Money, and Mystery. We have taken a little break since September of 2022, and we are back with the double murder trial of Alex Murdaugh. And a lot has happened since September as both the defense and the prosecution have geared up for what's about to take place today in Walterboro, South Carolina at the Colleton County Courthouse. And I want to introduce who's with us today. We have our executive producer for the podcast, Drew Tripp, is here, and our exclusive legal analyst for ABC News 4, Sinclair Broadcasting, and Unsolved South Carolina podcast, the former South Carolina Attorney General Charlie Condon. And we are absolutely thrilled to have him. And I have to say, from a personal standpoint, to have that level of legal expertise in the courtroom with us, we are not only getting a real understanding, a very, very special window into this whole case. So thank you very much for doing all of this with us.
My pleasure. It's been a privilege.
And so, Mr. Condon, I want to just kind of jump off with these, what set the table to get here today. They really set up several things now. We're looking at three major parts to this: the motive, the alibi, and one of the big pieces of evidence. As we kind of get into this, talk to me a little bit about why it was important for them to get some of this out there, about the evidence and about the financial crimes. Maybe start off with the evidence right now.
Well, the motive evidence, if you step back and think of what the state is alleging, it's just one of the most shocking criminal acts perhaps in the history of South Carolina. The state's alleging, and they have real arguments to back this up, the state's alleging that this very prominent attorney, in order to cover up his financial crimes, and the dateline is compelling, on the day that he was confronted with his crimes, he then goes to his estate there and execution style kills his wife and his son in order to divert attention away from his financial misdeeds. And as preposterous as that might sound in the abstract, it actually worked. Everyone dropped the inquiry into his financial misdeeds. They felt really sorry for him, for someone who lost his wife and his son to some horrible hitman or drug dealer or you name it. And the investigation relative to the financial crimes stopped. It was successful. So the state's alleging that. Now, the defense obviously is arguing very strongly against that, but actually to support the state's, what the defense says is preposterous, if you fast forward a little while from that, he then pulls a similar shocking activity with his assisted suicide with Eddie Smith. He then was again facing accountability for his financial crimes, and the state alleges that action then was committed and planned in order to divert attention again away from being caught for financial misdeeds on the very same day where that was happening again. So this case has everything, and the state's ability to get this evidence in, we'll see how the judge is going to rule. We expect a ruling as early as tomorrow. I think it's a key part of the state's case, and if it's not allowed in, they may have some real problems.
Yeah, the thing that is most jarring to me and striking to me about that, and the state spelling out its motive, is the contrast of what was the cost versus the reward. What did Alex Murdaugh allegedly gain by doing what the state is accusing him of doing? And what he gained was time. That's all it really gave him. It gave him a brief reprieve because the walls were closing in, and they continued to close in, and that they haven't stopped. Now we're pretty well on close to 2 full years into this, but just the when you break it down to its base level, its foundation, that's what we're talking about here. A man is accused of murdering his own wife and son to buy himself time to avoid accountability for his own crimes. And that is just, when you see it spelled out that way, and when you see it spelled out that way in the state's filings and their motive assertions, it brings it home to be particularly chilling and a reminder of what we're dealing with here. This is awful.
Well, and the other thing that we have is, like, we have the alibi as well. I mean, there's a lot of going back and forth. And the reason we're talking about some of these things right now specifically is because these were in these pretrial motions that have to be decided in the next, as you said, like, could be decided as soon as tomorrow.
Yes.
Probably no later than Thursday. We're going to know if 99 financial crimes of Alex Murdaugh are actually going to go into this case. Crimes that, once again, we have to understand he hasn't actually been convicted of these crimes yet. So that's part of sort of the legal hurdles and acrobatics that are going on, I think, with this. The alibi is another thing. So Alex Murdaugh says he wasn't there. He says that he was at his mom's. His timeline, however, is running into a few issues with the prosecution and what they may have as far as cell phone video from Paul Murdaugh, his son who died. There was some video that they're actually trying to pull right now. So we're going to hear more about that. And then, of course, the evidence, the blood spatter. We've been hearing about this T-shirt that Alex Murdaugh was wearing the night of the murders, and Dick Harpootlian has written in his motions some really colorful language that he's trying to discredit the expert that's involved. And the expert was out of town, and the expert had basically some issues as far as whether or not the blood spatter was really there. And now they've got to rule on that. What do you think they're going to do about that?
I think that motion from the defense has been effective in its language and its arguments, so much so that it would not surprise me in the least if the state of South Carolina decides not to present that evidence whatsoever. So we'll see how the judge rules and how the state proceeds if allowed in. But in front of a jury, having prosecuted many cases, I'm not so sure I'd want to go down that path of defending that expert. And I don't know him, but the filings that I've seen do call into question his methods and his credibility.
And so let's get to what happened today. So now we've told you that there's several motions that we're going to have to listen to. We go to court today. We're in Colleton County at this beautiful, grand 19th century courthouse. We know that we've got all of these potential jurors coming in. They've called almost 900 jurors. Have you ever heard of 900 jurors?
No, not in state court. I will say, though, that the organization And the local clerk of court here, Becky Hill, she's behind this. It's been really impressive. I'm not so sure any other clerk in the state of South Carolina could have done as well as she has done today. It just was like clockwork. There were over 200 jurors that were vetted. We're going to proceed here with the trial this week because of the organization and the speed with which everything's been handled. Very impressive. We have one more group to go tomorrow morning. I expect that that'll go equally well. And I expect that we'll be in a position to seat a jury here either tomorrow or the next day.
So as far as some of the surprises, I wanted to talk about like what the surprises were today in court. So we had, just so you all know what was going on, we got 4 panels of jurors. In those 4 panels, we're probably looking at somewhere 80, 90 jurors. All the jurors are identified, of course, by numbers. But since Mr. Condon and I are sitting in the courtroom, and Drew was able to go into the courtroom, we got a chance to see who's getting pulled. So what did we think about that as far as the makeup?
Well, I think as expected, there is a significant level of overlap and cross-pollination and conflict, whatever you want to call it, between not just people who know the Murdaughs, not just people who are familiar with this case. It kind of runs the gamut of the judge would go through and how this worked is they would go through a list of possibilities and a list of possible exemptions that the jury might encounter. And do you have any past dealings with the Murdaugh family? Do you have any past dealings with the Colleton County Sheriff's Office, the Attorney General's Office, the Solicitor's Office, SLED, so on and so forth? Anybody that is in any way involved in this case in an official capacity, if you have some prior dealings with it, with that organization, with that agency, the court wants to know about it. And that also goes beyond that to they want to know what people know about this case and how they know what they know. And that goes to what we're doing right now, creating a podcast. We've at this point created well over a dozen episodes of this podcast. I've personally written dozens of online news articles about this and put out all sorts of stuff on my Twitter account, and you have as well. We've been covering this relentlessly. Journalists all over the state and in some cases across the country have been covering this relentlessly. That was a major factor going into today's questioning of the jurors. And I think one anecdote was from the very first panel this morning. Once they whittled it down a little bit to some of the folks who couldn't serve for various reasons, normal reasons like scheduling conflicts and family obligations. Once they got through that first initial panel, Judge Newman says, "Okay, how many have heard of this case?" And every single person stood up. And we're talking dozens of people in just one jury panel. Everybody has heard of this case, and they've heard about it through podcasts, and they've heard about it through media, just in general. But there were varying degrees of impact in that. And what I took note of is how many people said they could remain unbiased despite what they knew and what they had experienced. And Charlie, with your court experience, I want to know what are you looking for in that situation? Again, it's hard to probably compare what we're dealing with right now to any other case in history, but how big a deal is media coverage and general public awareness when you're trying to seat a jury?
This case really brought to my mind the importance of the judge in particular, the way he handled that, asking those questions to get to the bottom of not so much whether you've heard about it, although that was very impressive, but even if you formed an opinion, can you set that opinion aside and decide this case upon the evidence that will be produced in this courtroom? And it was fascinating to see what jurors took him up on that relative to staying, but those that formed an opinion and said they couldn't set it aside and left. And to your point, very good word, cross-pollination. I was struck by the ties that were out there. Colleton County, what are we talking, 30 or 40,000 people, the Murdaugh family going back so many generations in this part of South Carolina, I can see why the defense made absolute no effort to move this case. I think the defense wants this case tried in Walterboro. It makes perfect sense because, after all, to get a hung jury, it just takes one person. And I think it's an effective defense strategy that they're employing relative to jury selection.
Well, and something you told me even last week before we actually saw this, the defense and the prosecution up there, one thing that really struck me when we were looking, we had an opportunity for this bird's eye view of all of these monitors and screens on the prosecution side and the defense side, and they're going through those jurors. They already know who they're looking at.
Yes, and I'm confident that the defense will have 10 strikes, free challenges, peremptory challenges we call them, and the state will have 5. They're counting the folks that they need to keep off of this jury, and they're saving their strikes for people that they do not want to have seated. And, of course, the state has more of a challenge since they only have 5, and the defense can be a bit more freewheeling since they have 10. But you can sort of tell relative to the ones they're trying to keep on that panel, because either side would think, well, if I keep that person on, they're going to have to burn a strike for that person. And it's an important picking a jury and who actually sits there. That's, to me, if not the most important, certainly one of the most important aspects of getting a successful either prosecution or a defense. And as I've said, it doesn't take but one for the defense to, in effect, be successful, because they'll have a mistrial, and the ability of the state to retry this is challenging. Although I will say, typically upon retrials, the state does have an advantage since they know what the evidence is going to be. But I think both sides are being well represented. And if you could pardon the personal, to me it was just to see that defendant there. I don't know him, but I knew his father well, and I knew his grandfather well. And then to see the prosecutor, I hired him, Creighton Waters, when I was Attorney General of South Carolina, and to come full circle, the defense attorney, Dick Harpootlian, he was my Democratic opponent. I was a Republican nominee when I was elected Attorney General of South Carolina. So it's a really small world in a lot of ways for me. But it was also a very sad occasion, right, if you think about it, because both Randolph Murdaugh and Buster, as I called them, they were really good prosecutors. I thought they really, in terms of being dedicated public servants, I really held them in the highest esteem. And I can't help but think of what they might think of what's going on here today were they to witness it.
What happens tomorrow?
Tomorrow we've got one more panel. I think we're going to be full steam ahead with a jury panel that could be struck, that could be in the late afternoon, if not late afternoon the next day. I do think these pretrial motions will be heard tomorrow, very important ones relative to the strategies of both sides. And so a lot of action. We're underway here, and the trial of the century has started here in Walterboro, South Carolina.
Thank you. And Drew, tell me what.
Well, I've got 3 things that stuck out to me today that I want to mention briefly. One, going back to Charlie, something you mentioned about the way that this whole organization was run, this whole production was run with the Colleton County Clerk of Court, Becky Hill. I want to recognize her just from a professional standpoint. She has been incredibly helpful to us, and I've heard that echoed from other reporters, journalists. To a person, she's been incredibly helpful, and she is always there to meet our needs and has been just an incredible asset. The people of Colleton County and the leadership here should be very proud, because she's made this very easy to do our jobs and made this a top-notch professional, again, a professional production. Number 2, for me, I wanted to, 2 things that really, really stood out to me. First, the sheer volume of witnesses the state is planning to call. And I'm sure there are going to be some from the defense that maybe we haven't heard about yet, but I know what we heard today at least was the state side of thing. And it is, at one point I timed it, it took Judge Newman 11 minutes to read the list of witnesses out to the potential jurors to see if they had to see if they had any potential conflict. Thad Moore over at the Post and Courier said he counted 12 minutes, but we'll split the difference there. Y'all, it is massive and it runs the gamut. And then the third thing that at the end of the day sort of stood out to me is adding color to this and bringing it home. There was a young man at the end of the day when the judge asked, is there anyone here who feels do you know anybody involved in this? Do you feel like you would be able to be partial? There was a young man who said he was friends with Paul Murdaugh and he was friends with Buster Murdaugh. And when the judge asked about all the various people he knew on he had listed on the potential witness list, this man said he knew several of the people on the witness list and had personal dealings with him. I think that was the first one I had heard. Maybe there were some in the earlier in the day of people giving that level of impact, making that level of an impact statement, but we heard it there at the very end. Yeah, I knew these people. I knew this person who has been shot and killed in cold blood. And if that's any indication of, the level of consciousness and impact that this case has had on the community at large. To Charlie's point, the state and prosecution have a real task at hand to try and get a fair and favorable jury.
Well, we have a lot to unpack every day on this podcast, and I'm thrilled to say that we're going to be able to be offering this on a daily basis. I'm Anne Emerson. I'm here with our legal expert, former South Carolina Attorney General Charlie Condon, executive producer Drew Tripp. We also have Maxwell Harrison. He's going to be running the show here for us at the podcast. We have Tara Jabor, our incredible reporter who's going to be covering this at ABC News 4, as well as hopefully joining us for some upcoming episodes. We have Sam Griswold here, our photojournalist, who is absolutely just running around getting every single bit of video that y'all are going to be seeing, along with Max Harrison. We have more people coming in from ABC News 4, so big shout out to the group to make this happen. We are going to be able to bring you the highlights every day. We're going to try and keep it to about, give you a good briefing so you don't have to go anywhere else for your news. And we're going to be offering it to you as much as possible. So we look forward to our daily podcast for Unsolved South Carolina, the Murdaugh's Murder, Money, and Mystery. Until tomorrow, gentlemen.
Sounds good.